The jail. There was no Japanese there. The native told us to go into the jail, which we did, and we immediately crashed on the concrete floors and the cells within the jail. All the cell doors were open, and so we just walked in and crashed because we were still dog-tired and hungry. Anyway, the next morning, about probably 6 o'clock in the morning, there was a hell of a lot of roaring going on, and Japanese troops arrived with bayonets and rifle and bayonets, with their tin hats on, and they started to yell at us to get out, you know. And we got out, and they lined us up in front of a wall inside the jail. They had about a 8-foot high wall, and just in front of the jail there was a trench, a little slit trench, and they made us stand up alongside of that. And then a couple of the Jap soldiers came out with a little machine gun, and the blokes with their rifles were stood there with their rifles more or less trained on us, and we thought, well, this is it, we've had the bomb. But then a Japanese officer came in. He was only a lieutenant, that I know now. He was only a lieutenant, a little runt of a bloke he was, but he screamed all the time, walked up and down in front of us, 20 blokes standing up there more or less, and he pulled out his revolver, and he was brandishing that all the time. He was walking up and down in front of us, stinging out of the top of whatever he said in Japanese, no doubt cursing us or whatever. Obviously telling the Japs, well, you don't have to worry about these blokes, they're nothing to be afraid of, you know. Anyway, he did that for about 5 minutes, I suppose, and then he put his revolver back in his holster, turned his back on and said something to the Japanese soldiers and walked inside. The Japanese blokes on the ground with the machine gun, they unfolded the machine gun, got up, walked away, and left us with just the soldiers with their rifles and bayonets. And they started to tell us then to go out the gate of the jail. We went out there, and outside there was a truck about 30 yards away, 50 yards away, and going to the truck there was 2 lines of natives. We had to walk through them to get to the truck. And they all spat at us, hit us with sticks, threw stones at us, no doubt cursing us. In retrospect, I'm sure they were just as scared of the Japs as what we were, and they were probably doing it to put on a little bit of a show. Anyway, we eventually climbed into the trucks, all 20 or 30, 20 odd of us, and we went to Serang Theatre. When we got to Serang Theatre, we found, to our pleasant surprise, there were already about 250 Perth survivors there. And they were the ones that had already been picked up by the Jap destroyer.
Yes.
And they'd been brought to Serang Theatre also. So we were very happy about seeing all of our mates there. Well, eventually in this theatre, there must have been about 800 people when I was there. There were soldiers from Singapore, there were soldiers from Java, Australian soldiers, English soldiers, Air Force personnel from different areas in Singapore and Java. And we were there for 6 weeks. I was for 4 weeks. 4 weeks I was there. And during that time we received 1 rice ball a day for food. And if you were lucky you got a drink of sip of water. The latrine was just outside the side of the theatre where we were. And there was only a hole in the ground, a big pit that had been dug. And you straddled that on a plank if you wanted to relieve yourself in this damn thing. And flies were bad, everything was bad about the place. We had to lie down on this concrete floor night and day. We weren't allowed to talk for the first week. Then the Japs gradually relented and knew we weren't going to be much of a danger to them. But all this time they had a couple of AIM-1 machine gun trained up on the group. And the soldiers were patrolling up and down the aisles in the theatre with their rifles, and anyone moved or made a noise or annoyed them, they'd boot them or hit them with their rifle, you know. And this went on, in my case, for 4 weeks. And then suddenly they took 20 of us for some reason out of the theatre, and they took us around to Serang Jail. Well, Serang Jail was worse than the theatre. You didn't get a rice ball a day, you only got one every second day if you were lucky. There 25 men in the cell that I was put into. That was only supposed to, according to the sign on the door, for 9 inmates. We were 25 of us. Consisted of some Americans, sailors off the Houston, some Air Force personnel, a couple of English soldiers, and Perth survivors. Perth survivors that were in there were Dave Manning, who's a well-known Victorian Perth survivor. A chap that wrote a book Behind Bamboo. He was a journalist from the ABC in Singapore.
Rowan Rivette.
Rowan Rivette. He had escaped from Singapore via Sumatra. Had a hell of a trip going across Sumatra to get to Java. He was in a pretty bad way. And I was there then for 2 weeks. Then at the end of the total of 6 weeks in Serang village, we were transported down to bicycle camp in Batavia by truck. And I got down to Batavia, I think it was April, late April or early May, in bicycle camp in Batavia.
Can I just ask one more question? Going back to when you were in Serang, did you see Surgeon Lieutenant Commander Sam Stenning at any time?
I never saw him.
No.
He was recovered on the destroyer initially. He was picked up on the destroyer. And he did go to Serang Theatre, I believe. Either he was working in the back part of the theatre, tending to wounded, or he'd already left, I'm not sure. But I don't think he was in bicycle camp when I was there. I certainly made no contact with him. We arrived in bicycle camp around about late April, early May 1942. And when we got there, there were survivors who had been picked up in Java, 2nd, 3rd machine gunners, a company of them, and there were some survivors, even from the 2nd, 4th machine gunners, who had either escaped from Singapore or who hadn't got from Java. I'm not sure which. There was Air Force personnel there, and also there was about 350 American sailors from the Houston. About a week after or so after we were there, a whole battalion of American 131st Field Artillery Group arrived, who had also been captured in Java. And in around about October 1942, most of the camp were transported away from the bicycle camp to Singapore on their way to Burma. A couple of weeks after that group left, I went with another group, and we became known as the 5A Java Force. And we went to Burma via Singapore. We stayed in Singapore for 3 months.
So what ship did you go from?
We went from Java to Singapore. We went on the, Dainichi Maru?
Yes.
Dainichi Maru? Yeah, that's right, Dainichi Maru. And then we went from Singapore. We spent 3 months in Singapore. And then we were on our way to Burma.
Yeah. Can I just go back just before you leave Java? Can you remember any older transport fellows who would have been older than 35 years of age, who had been somehow brought from Singapore and ended up in Java?
There was quite a few. What are they now? 2nd, 4th MT?
Yes, motor transport.
2nd, 5th motor transport group. There was probably a dozen or more, I would imagine. Older blokes, much older blokes than what us young blokes were. Yes, there were. And there was some motor transport group from Singapore.
Thank you.
How they got there or whether they'd been left at Java, I don't know.
No, I don't know.
I never got their story.
So you're moving to Burma now.
So we left Singapore again around about early January, 3rd of January 1943. And we sailed for Mulmeen, as it turned out. On our way to Mulmeen, we were bombed by American Air Force 4-engine bombers. They sank a Dutch, there was 2 ships in our convoy, a Dutch